When it comes to the Japanese, they certainly are a contender for the strangest genre of people. Perhaps it has something to do with the residual influence and generational effects of nuclear fallout on brain development, but that's neither here nor there. It's in Japan, and Japan has made quite a name for itself, while on the one hand being a well-respected, obedient culture, while on the other hand being completely insane. And insane is just the type of thing that I'm looking for. Speaking of, Takeshi Miike, the creator of this movie, also known for such classics as Audition, Ichi the Killer, and of course Zebra Man, pulls absolutely no punches when it comes to creating something that purely exists to border on reality, and there's something not quite right here, as that's the perfect way to describe this. Not quite right. Taking a look at all of the extreme taboos a person is possibly capable of having and thinking, yeah, I'll take all of them. Well, that's when you get this movie, Visitor Q. A movie that doesn't concern itself with all the conventional trappings of being a movie, like having likable characters, believable motives, or any sense of reality. Instead, it serves as a reminder as to what happens when we allow humans to retain free will. The movie immediately begins with a man going to visit a working woman as he's filming footage for his documentary. A working woman who is extremely keen on showing him her various different services. At first, the man is hesitant and trying to fight the urge to continue before letting himself go and actually going through with it. Oh yeah, this woman is his daughter, by the way. The man is named Kiyoshi and has come to visit his estranged daughter Miki, and it ends up being an incredibly uncomfortable 10 minutes of absolutely despicable things happening on camera. If you're used to watching Japanese videos on the internet, then the extreme censoring you're seeing on screen will be nothing new to you. But as the nature of this movie tends to lean more towards the side of I'm feeling really uncomfortable right now, large portions of this video are going to unfortunately have to be censored due to YouTube not really liking it when I show unimaginable horrors committed by humans on their website. But that being said, uncensored versions of all my videos are available for YouTube members and patrons. Wink wink. Will from the future here. Yeah, I wasn't joking. YouTube has already removed this video once, and this is an even further censored version. Yeah. This movie's just that crazy. Once the man is done visiting his daughter inside and out, we see him sitting at a train station while on his way to work as he watches a family walk past with their little daughter as he thinks about what he's just done, and that he didn't even get a family discount. While he's distracted, being an absolutely terrible person, a man in red standing on the opposite side of a window behind him then randomly decides to pick up a rock and crack him over the head with it. The rock basher being the titular Visitor Q. After we've been introduced to the daughter and now slightly concussed dad, we get a glimpse into the home life that could have blossomed into such a healthy relationship between him and his daughter. At home, there's the mother and the man's wife named Kiko, and she's working on a jigsaw puzzle. Apparently jigsaws are quite dangerous work, as she appears to be covered in marks and bruises when her son Takuya suddenly appears and begins destroying things in an already destroyed home. He isn't happy about the new toothbrush that she's just bought him, so expresses his frustration to his mother by repeatedly whipping her with a rug beater. Once he's done beating the dust off his mother because she's a bit dirty looking, he heads up to his bedroom when bullies from his school arrive. In school, he appears to be the victim, while at home, he's the one doing the bullying. They begin firing fireworks towards the house while launching a volley of rocks through all of the different windows. Fireworks being fired into a traditional Japanese home. Homes which are notorious for being built out of wood and paper. Kiko then wakes up after regaining consciousness from being thrown through a wall and casually walks through the home as all of the windows are being destroyed behind her without so much as a slight reaction to it. She walks into her bedroom as her home is being attacked and quite possibly set on fire, and she removes her top to reveal that her body is covered from head to toe in various different marks and bruises, all inflicted on her by her own son. So dealing with the stress of having children, Kiko decides to relax a bit by using some heroin, a traditional Japanese pastime and proven relaxer of stress. Back with Kiyoshi, after taking a rock to the skull earlier that day, he's returning home from work, where he snuck up behind once again and hit over the head with a rock. A mystical rock that finds itself mysteriously drawn to the skulls of questionable Japanese men. After hitting the man over the head to simply see what the contents of his brains look like, we then see that the visitor is actually in Kiyoshi and Kiko's home as a guest, with it never being addressed as to who he is or why he's there, because that would just ruin the fun. So the visitor is now randomly a part of this family, as that's just something that they and we need to accept because there's no other choice about it, as we see him sitting there and eating dinner with Kiyoshi when Takuya suddenly begins pushing his mother around. This being something that no one in the room is even remotely concerned by, because that just sounds like a lot of effort. Takuya once again begins whipping her as he's shouting and screaming at her for daring to allow the TV commercials to come on. Kiyoshi is done eating, so heads upstairs to bed, where he's then followed by his wife, who is able to smell that he's been with another woman. But not just any woman. their daughter. Something that she is able to deduce from simply smell alone, but something that doesn't really seem to bother any of them all that much, as apparently it's no big deal in Japan. Waking up in the middle of the night, we see Kiyoshi go outside in his car for some privacy, where he proceeds to watch back one of his old tapes. It shows him being out on the streets recording a documentary about the Japanese youth, before coming upon some Japanese youth in their natural habitat. He approaches them and asks if he can interview them, followed by the group of kids taking the microphone from him and using it to interview his small intestine. Something absolutely horrific that's happened to Kiyoshi, but something that he sneaks off to watch on his own every now and then. After a long night of watching microphones being shoved into places that they really shouldn't be able to fit, the next day he's walking to work when suddenly he sees something that grabs his attention. It's his son being bullied by the kids from school. Upon seeing this, he proceeds to pull out his video camera and begins to record the attack, which he then calls perfect. He loves what he's seeing, and it gives him an idea. Create a documentary about the bullying that's being inflicted on his son. While Kiyoshi's out at work, it's time for Kiko to get to work as she's got a habit to feed, where we then see that much like her daughter, she's also a working woman who offers people certain services. She's with a man who's taken quite the interest in her due to the fact that she has a permanent limp that's been inflicted by her son, something that the man swears makes women a whole lot better. After repeatedly hitting the man with his own belt at his own request, because he's just a bit weird like that and doesn't understand how to keep his trousers up, she heads back home, where she's then hugged by the visitor from behind. But while he's hugging her, they both realize that she's making like an over-enthusiastic cow and getting milk all over the place. Something which the visitor seems to be pretty fond of, as he then proceeds to all over the room for the fun of it, as apparently he really likes his rooms to smell like rancid milk. All the while, Takuya has returned home from school and is watching from the other end of the hallway as he realizes that by the time the visitor is done, he'll only be able to have dry cereal today. So that night, Takuya gets upset with his mother and throws a hot bowl of food at her face. But Kiko is a new, freshly milked woman and isn't going to accept that. So she responds to this disobedient child by walking into the kitchen, retrieving a knife, and throwing it at him. He manages to dodge it, but neither Kiyoshi nor the visitor seem to really care that much as to what those two are getting up to. And to make dinner time even more entertaining, the bullies then return with even more fireworks and rocks. Kiyoshi starts to frantically film it, as filming his son being bullied is his new obsession, but the visitor and Kiko are just casually sitting there eating their food as the literal chaos erupts behind them, as they're not really bothered by it because they've got dinner to eat. Continuing his love for watching his son be bullied, the next day, Kiyoshi is watching his son from a distance as his arms are tied up and he's being forced to defecate on the floor by the bullies. The visitor is there, filming it all with him, and Kiyoshi has brought along one of his colleagues and someone that he seems to have been having an affair with. He's trying to get her excited about their next big hit they have on their hands, but it turns out she actually hates him and now wants nothing to do with him. Being rejected by a woman, he proceeds to let out his inner incel and chases after her before throwing her down a hill and off on her as the visitor stands there casually filming the entire thing. Kiyoshi seems to be in a frenzy of rage and accidentally strangles her in the process and only realizes after it's too late. So as the visitor continues to record at Kiyoshi's request, because he'll definitely get a pay rise for this, they take her back to Kiyoshi's home to get the tools that they'll need to chop her up into small little pieces. But while using a pen to mark out on the corpse where he'll make the incisions, he starts to feel certain things. Ungodly things. Ungodly things that gives him the bright idea to grab the camera, point it at himself, and excitedly talk about how watching his son get beaten up has awoken something great in him. He then proceeds to do exactly what you think he's going to do. But midway through it, the woman proceeds to empty the contents of her bowels all over Kiyoshi. Not being too bothered by the smell, he continues, when suddenly rigor mortis kicks in, and he finds himself trapped. She's latched onto him, and she's not letting go. He starts shouting out to his wife for some help, but meanwhile, inside the house, she's a little preoccupied, showing the visitor how she can make the whole house smell like off milk. Something that the visitor finds himself quite intrigued by, so he proceeds to get himself an umbrella so he can sit back and watch and not get covered in milk. Once she's done depositing her calcium into the surrounding area, she eventually finds her husband and attempts to save him by covering both him and the body in oil in hopes of being able to separate them. But as he's well and truly stuck, she retreats to the bedroom before returning with some of her trusty heroin, which seems to relax him just enough in order to get free. While being trapped in perhaps one of the most compromising positions a person could possibly ever find themselves in, never mind by his own wife, something happened to Kiyoshi in that bath, and it wasn't just the heroin. A spark reignited between him and his wife, who seems to be much happier these days as she finds herself freshly squeezed. And feeling great about his relationship with his wife, suddenly the bullies return to torment their son. But this time, he sprints into action and hits one of them over the head with a spanner before proceeding to soar into the skull of one of the others. The third and final bully attempts to flee, but feeling a little bit more nimble these days as all of that liquid is out of her system, Kiko throws a screwdriver directly into his skull. Their love for each other is returned, despite the rather unfortunate circumstances they find themselves in, and they gleefully wrap up the bodies of the boys together before going to partake in the traditional Japanese couples activity of slicing a woman's body to pieces. The visitor walks into the house to see Takuya laying face down in a pool of his mother's own milk, and he tells the visitor that he's going to be good from now on, as he realizes that the visitor had actually come here to save the family and not destroy it. He's like a milky Japanese Jesus or something. With one final person left to save in the family, the visitor passes their daughter Miko on the street, who proceeds to offer her services to him. Being excited by the prospect of a female speaking to him, he picks up a rock and hits her over the head with it. Next, we see her finally returning to the family home and looking out of her bedroom window to see Kiko feeding Kiyoshi directly from the tap. Feeling a little bit thirsty herself, the movie then comes to an end with her joining in on the hydrating fun, with the moral of the story being, a rock is always a good solution to your problems. I think the main thing to understand about this movie is that it's provocative and taboo, with the main goal of being provocative and taboo. And that's it. You just watched a weird breastfeeding movie. But if you take a step back and actually take a moment to learn where this originates from, you'll actually discover that there's an ancient Japanese folktale involving a rather milky man arriving at the homes of dysfunctional families and saving them with his rock. Except there isn't really, and I just made that up. So before this video comes to an end, I'd like to just give a big shout out and a massive thank you to all of the YouTube members and patrons, the people who every month continue to go out of their way to help support the channel. If you're interested in becoming a YouTube member or patron yourself, not only are you just generally being a great support, but you also get access to a few little perks, like being able to join the private Discord server, where you can then get links to all uncensored versions of videos. Now starting off with this week's new YouTube signups, a massive thank you to McPosey, Just Ryan, Kristen Eriksdotter, Gabriella Howe, Matthew Sabot, Colton Wagman, Caitlin Dexter, Jeannie, Hubble Bubble Trouble, McMonster Gaming, Honeykitten18, Nosfi, Penta Shurikens, Wolfie Harris, Peen Wienerstein, Azuki, Methil Junja, Joel Gustas, Clarity, Sid Maker, Leonardo Del Toro, Restore, Mephisto, Azorog, Not Relevant, Flux, Mikey, Mallory McFarlane, Stuart Pott, Rudolph, Janny Jakella, Dark Toons, Cameron Kelly, Thad Anya, Pink Lava, The Last Final Girl on the Left, Movie Hero, Lorenzo Ascenti, Blondie, Cody Curtis, Mars, Revenge, Ride the Guy, Halo, Argent Main, Jesse Camara, OG Bing Bong 13, Liar Strings, Ruhan Shaik, Cosmin Chifer, Chris L, Lily Parsons, Ry Kane, Akella, Cap Z, Abigail Mills, Cecilia Burnham, Story Glore, Yolanda Chantel, C. Brockett 1971, Mitchell Crease, Dan Gardiner, Brandon Brano, Hargreaves Wall, Mohammed Amin, Joy Dillman, Jeremy Grounds, Alex Berry, Hiko, The Attic, Justin Christie, Miss Jester, Anime 101, Kelly John Biswell, Amberly Vaughan, Jake Pendlebury, Scott Ashford, Super Doll, A Sailor's Prayer, A Long-Legged Lummox, Christian, and Christopher. Now moving over to this week's new Patreon signups, a massive thank you to Jamie Shipley, Ryan Monaghan, Solsoon, Mage Rage, Amy James, Mia Hudson, Lee Woods, Gachi1, Renzo, Simon Live, Asaf Amron, Gold Phillips, Oliver Sarig, Michael Harper, Constantine Cole, Ronan Menez, Buttball, Michael, Toji, Joshua McKell, Candy Sheiks, James, Joe Viola, Andrew Pasick, JD, Ken, Seth Nuston, James Ramirez, Nearly Dead Goldfish, Jim Lello, Wayne Weeks, Stop Capping, Via 1, Hayden, Jack Anderson, Jake Nash, Songbird, Ray Asher Barnes, Cryan Branston, Frads Khan, Flip Simansky, Brunanda, Cujo, Jacob Rat, Jasmine Guzman, Angie, Jesse Cabrera, Daniel Weber, Mortal Greenworks, Patrick Corbett, Daniel Kruger, Smokey, Scooby-Dooby-Doo, Simple Snack, Asia, Antonio Caventes, Dingleberry Blop Honk Croissant, Aventium, Hoods, Lulu Beninga, Jackson Smith, Stony, Lee Goats, KJ, Shanti Campbell, Anime React Hub, Sile Karis, Vincent Elvet, Anonymous, Carol Ann, Joe Hard, Joseph J, Local Hubby Bearded Man, Tyler Weeks, Bob McDabbit, and Irona. So once again, a massive shout out to all of the YouTube members and patrons, and a big thank you to everyone else for watching.